Hey everyone, this is Robert with Odd Random Thoughts. I'm back again to do another tutorial on the LAMP stack and WordPress installation, or just any common website you want to build on your own Linux server. I got to thinking after I made the last video on how to install the LAMP stack and get a site up and running. I got to thinking about some of the questions that I had from some of the viewers before I had made that video, and there was a lot of concern focused on the vhosts, the virtual hosts, and how to get those hosts to point to the proper site, basically to get the resolution correct. There's one thing I will mention. If you have created separate subdirectories for each website that you want to run, this is only going to apply if you're running multiple websites, and you're not using the default var www HTML directory, be sure that you go into the var www/html directory and delete that default index.html file that Apache creates when you install. If that file is still there, anytime you access any domain for any of the sites you have running, it's more than likely going to go to that page, and it's going to drive you crazy. So just be sure you have deleted that index file from that directory, and then as long as you have all of your comp files set with the correct directory path to the root files for that site, and everything else should be good as long as you have your domain defined and your comp file and all that. But let's take a look here at what I've done. I've gone back and redid a couple things to make it a little more organized. Let's go to our root directory for our sites here. So I put mine in var www, which is where y'all's probably are. As you can see, I have a new testsite.com and a new wordpress.com domain. Now keep in mind, these are all running locally on my LAN. I don't own these domains, so there's nothing externally pointing toward my server from outside my LAN, so this is only accessible through my LAN. But if we take a look in the new testsite.com, I then have the public HTML, and in that directory is where I'm keeping the website files. So we'll go into that. And as you can see, all I have in there is an index.html file. And if we take a look at that, all I put was the beginning and closing HTML head and body tags and the word testing. So if I bring up that domain, that's all you're going to see is the word testing on that site. So if we go back and look in the new WordPress.com domain subdirectory, we'll go back into the public HTML folder. I have the directory structure the same for both sites, so this one will be in new wordpress.com/public HTML. So we'll go to that folder, and if we list the files in this directory, you see I have a WordPress installation, and so that domain is running a test WordPress site. So I have just two sites, one with the index file and one with the WordPress installation. So let's clear this out, and we'll go back to our home. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new site, and I'm going to show you how to enter it into your bind DNS server. For those of you that may have created your own Linux router using Ubuntu from my tutorial, and you can find that video if you just look through my videos, you'll find it. But I also showed you how to install bind and to administer it through webmin. So I'm going to show you how to point your domains you're creating to your server to where you can use your domain web address to access the sites you're creating. So first, let's go ahead and create a new site. So if you see here, these are the WordPress tar that I had downloaded in the last video, and then the WordPress directory where we extracted everything. If you haven't gotten this far, you can go back and check out that video. I just uploaded it. It's the latest video I had on there, so you can check that out. But let's go into the WordPress directory. Okay, and we'll see all of our files there. Now, what we're going to do, since we're going to go ahead and create another WordPress site, what we want to do is to create a new database for each WordPress site in MySQL. So let's do that first. We'll go into our MySQL and enter our MySQL root password. Okay, now we are in the MySQL monitor. So let's create a new database. If you remember in the last video, our database for the WordPress installation was WordPress, so we're going to create something different. Let's call this one, we'll just call this WordPress 2. So we're creating a new database. We'll hit enter. Okay, now at this point we'll create a new user. The last video in the other site WordPress site I made, I used Robert, my name at localhost, and a password. This time we'll call this one, well, just to stay with the theme, let's just call it Robert2 at localhost, identified by, and we'll pick a password. We'll just call this one password 123. Now please pick something more secure than that. This is just for an example. So we want to remember these credentials. So we have the database name is WordPress 2, user Robert2, password is password123, and yours will be different. Hopefully you don't use these same ones, but you can if you wish. Anyway, let's go ahead and create that user. We'll hit enter, and then we need to grant privileges on our new database to our new user. So grant all privileges on WordPress 2 to our new user, Robert2 at localhost. Okay, then let's go ahead and flush our privileges. And at that point we can just go ahead and exit. Okay, so now we are in our WordPress directory. So let's edit this config file to reflect our new database. So we'll list these files again, and always having trouble with the keyboard. So we'll edit this. So our database for this site is going to be WordPress 2. User is Robert2. And our new password will be password123. Okay, so let's go ahead and write that file and exit. Okay, So now we've done all that. Now we need to go into our root directory for our sites again, and we'll create our directory structure for our new site. So we'll go into var www, and we're going to create a new domain. So let's just call our new site WordPress2.com. So we'll do make directory WordPress2.com, and then we also want we need our -p for our parent directories. WordPress2.com /public HTML. Now you can put these in any directories you want. You can figure that out on your own. This is how I like to lay out my directory structure so I can find the files for each site easily. So we'll hit enter. If we list again, we see our new domain directory there. So now let's go back to Apache real quick, and we'll go ahead and create our config file. And we'll go into the sites available directory because that's where all of our comp files are stored. We'll list, we see we have the comp files for the new testsite.com and the new WordPress.com. So let's make a new one for our WordPress2.com. So we'll do sudo copy new WordPress.conf, and we will make a WordPress2.conf. So now let's edit our config file. We'll do sudo nano.conf, and here in our server name we will put our new domain, and we'll also change our alias. And then we need to change our root directory for our website files. And if you remember, we put that in WordPress2.com /public HTML. Okay, so that's all we need to do to our config file. We'll go ahead and write those changes and exit. Okay, so now let's go ahead and move our WordPress files over into our new website directory. So we'll do a sudo rsync avp and the tilde WordPress, because that's where our files are at right now, and we're going to move them to var www WordPress2.com public HTML, and don't forget the ending slash, and just hit enter. Okay, now let's go into that root directory that we created. So we'll go and we'll list our files. Okay, so there's our WordPress installation. So now we need to make our permission changes. So we'll do sudo change ownership R, and we'll go ahead and use our same user that we used to log into our server like we did in the last video. So we'll do Robert and group www data, and we'll apply that to all files in this directory, and just hit enter. Now we need to make our uploads directory. We'll make directory var to HTML, and it's going to be in our WordPress content and uploads. So we're going to make the uploads directory within the WordPress content folder. We'll hit enter, and then we'll change ownership on the uploads folder. and just hit enter. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're now ready to finish our installation through the web browser. But first we need to go ahead and get our site up and running. So let's do a sudo a2 enable site, and that's wordpress2.conf, and we'll hit enter. Okay, now this is saying to do the service Apache 2 reload. I have found that I get a lot better results if I do a restart. I'm not sure exactly why, but for some reason the reload doesn't always work properly. A restart will give Apache a full restart, so I like to do sudo service Apache 2 restart and hit enter, so that restarts the whole web server. Why that is that way, I don't know, but I've had a lot of trouble by using the reload command, and this has just worked every time flawlessly, so that's what I use. So now we have everything up and running. Our site should be accessible, but we want to fix our virtual host for this new domain, because right now if we type in wordpress2.com, I'll open the web browser here. If we type in wordpress2.com, we get gibberish. Okay, so we need to make sure that this web address is resolving to our server. Once it resolves to our server IP, it will take over from there and know which config file to read off of that domain. So let's go into our webmin, into our bind server, and if you don't have bind installed, you can do a manual edit of your config file if you're not using webmin, or this would be where you would go into your Windows host file and add your server IP and the domain name to that, and that would allow it to resolve. But since we're running our own internal DNS, you can see here I have a master zone for new site, testsite.com, and one for new WordPress.com. But I don't have one for WordPress2.com, which is our new domain. So what we'll do is we'll come here and we'll create a master zone. Okay, and our domain name is going to be WordPress2.com. Okay, and our master server, that's going to be our master DNS server. In my case, it's ns1brocato.com. And then you would just put in an email address, email@something.com. And then we want to go ahead and use the zone template, and we will also add reverses. So just hit create on the forward zone. We don't need a reverse zone on this because the domain that your router's running on may be different than the website you're creating, and you don't really need the IP to resolve to a host name. You just need the host name to resolve to the IP. So we'll just create a forward zone. So we'll hit create. Okay, now we are in, as you see at the top here, we're in the WordPress2.com master zone. So if we look at our name servers, we see that we have it pointing to the proper name server. This is very important because that's how it's going to resolve the IPs. So what we want to do is we'll go back here and we'll go to our addresses. First thing, let's add a record for our name server. So we'll do ns1 brocato.com. That's my name server. You would put whatever your name server's host name is there, and then we'll put the IP of our web server, or of our DNS server. Mine is 10.10.10.1, and we will just leave that. That's fine. Be sure at the end of your name you put a trailing period, because that's going to make sure it takes this absolute host name. So hit create. So now it's saying ns1.brocato.com is at this IP address. Now let's put in our new WordPress site. So that's going to be wordpress2.com with the trailing period. And then we'll put in the IP address of our server that's hosting this site. In my case, it's 10.10.10.118. Hit create. Okay, so now this new master record knows where our DNS server is, so it knows where to look for resolution, and it has the IP and the host name defined for our new site. So we'll hit apply configuration. That's going to save our changes, and then if we go back to our bind DNS server, we can see that our new domain is here within bind. So we have all three sites, newtestsite.com, newwordpress.com, and wordpress2.com. So now if we go back to our domain and we refresh, we should get our WordPress installation. So we'll refresh, and there you have it. Now our wordpress2.com domain is resolving to our server IP. Our virtual host in Apache is pointing it to the proper directory to find our installation files, and everything's working good. So here we would just complete our installation, and as you see, I also have the new test site. If I go there, remember that just had a file in it that said testing, so we'll hit enter. So there's that site. And if we go to newwordpress.com, there is our other WordPress installation. Now it looks just like the other one, but that's just because I haven't set up or finished the install on either one of these sites. But that's that is how you get your name resolution for your vhosts working for Apache. This was something I wanted to elaborate on more because it's a little hard to understand until you actually do it or see it. So I thought I would do an update video on this. We can go back to our command prompt or our terminal here for our Linux server, and let's go back to our etc Apache 2 sites enabled. And if we do a list, we can see that we have all three. This is where you would check to see which sites are running. We have all three sites running. Now you can, if you have a whole ton of sites and you may not want to have a separate configuration for each site. So there's a way around that. You can create one config file and just put the vhost and the directory structure and all that stuff within one file, and then you just run that one file and it will define all of your directories. You can do a quick search on Google and it'll show you how to do that. I'm not going to do that here because I've already got all these files running, and well, let's see. I'll go ahead and show you how to do that real quick. It won't take but a minute. So let's go back to our sites available. Okay, and we're just going to create an empty comp file. So we'll do sudo touch, and we'll create a virtual sites.conf. Okay, so now let's edit that file. Okay, so first thing you want to do is you want to ensure that Apache's listening on the proper port. So we'll type in listen 80, okay, and then we're going to listen for our virtual hosts on all IPs on port 80, so we'll type in name virtual host all IPs port 80, and then next we'll define our virtual hosts. So we'll do virtual host on all IPs on 80, and then we'll do our server name. This one will be new testsite.com server alias, and then we'll do our document root. This one was at public HTML. And if you have other directives you want to define, you can do that in there as well. But we'll close this similar to HTML, but with a / virtual host. Then we would come down and we would go ahead and create lines for our other sites. So this one would be new WordPress. Okay, and that's going to be in that directory. And then we would create another one for our new our WordPress 2. Okay, and that's basically all there is to it. Then we would just save this file. We'll go ahead and write that file and exit. And then instead of running each individual for new test site, new WordPress, and WordPress 2, we would go ahead and disable all of those sites, and then we could just run the virtual sites.conf, and it would bring up all of those sites together in one conf file, and then just restart the Apache service, and you would get the same results as far as the web browser is concerned, but you wouldn't have to keep track of so many conf files. So that's how you would combine a whole bunch of sites into one config file. And like I say, there's other directives that you might want to look into that you can add to your site depending on what kind of site it is and what services and all that good stuff you have running on it. But anyway, I hope this helped clear up a few things. I just felt that I needed to go back and revisit this and kind of go into a little more detail, also on how to get your domain names to point to your website, because that's a big frustration if that doesn't work properly. So hopefully this is helped out. Remember, if you don't have Bind installed, or you're not running a DNS server, say on Windows Server or anything like that, where you can enter these host names and these master zones, then you just simply edit your host file in Windows or Mac, or the etc hosts. You could edit that on a Linux machine to point to the right IP. But as long as you've done all that, then internally everything should resolve fine. If you want it accessible from the outside world, just go to, be sure you've purchased the domain name, go to your domain registrar, and edit the DNS records to point to your external facing IP, and then just forward your ports to 80 to the proper IP of your server, and internal DNS would take over from there, and everything would be peachy. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Sorry for not clearing all this up in the last video, but I think it kind of deserved one all on its own. So anyway, thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to, and leave me a thumbs up if this is helpful to you. Anyway, y'all have a good day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.